This is the scene after the mermaids where Hook captures Wendy by using Tiger Lily as bait, and Peter Pan frees Tiger Lily without Hook knowing, but then Tink says if you really want to get Peter Pan, you should capture this other girl, Wendy. So Hook captures Wendy, but then he also double crosses Tink and captures Tink as well. At the end of the scene, Peter comes back on after rescuing Tiger Lily and sees that Wendy's gone, and then he finds a feather from Hook's cap that Tink has plucked out as she was being captured. And he knows that Hook is the one who has captured Wendy, so then the very next scene that happens is he gathers all the lost boys up and says, we have to go free Wendy from Hook. So this is the scene where Hook brings Tiger Lily on and ends up capturing Wendy and Tinkerbell. So the mermaids are all still on stage. The music changes, and this is the same music as when Hook and Smee capture Tiger Lily. So it's kind of a repeat of the music. It's like their scheming music. The mermaids are all on stage. They hear that someone's coming, so they all exit stage. Peter and Wendy see that someone's coming, and so there's a big rock upstage center, and there's two smaller rocks downstage left and right. So Peter and Wendy run to the downstage right rock, and they're downstage of it, so it's like they're watching what's happening. As Hook, Smee, and enter with Tiger Lily, they'll probably have like a little boat that rolls on stage. Hook and Smee and Tiger Lily enter. Hook puts Tiger Lily on top of the big center rock, and they're like making sure she's tied up and everything. And Peter comes and like throws a rock at Hook. He distracts Hook in some way, and Hook is like, "What is that?" And Hook and Smee walk down off of the rock, and Hook says, "Smee, you go that way, I'll go this way." And they pull out their swords, and they stalk around the back of the rock. And while they're out of sight is when Peter comes up, frees Tiger Lily, and they go down and exit stage left. So when they're gone, Hook and Smee come back around, and they look up and see that Tiger Lily's gone, and Hook is all distraught and like, but at this point, Tinkerbell, when Peter's messing with Tiger Lily, Tinkerbell comes on stage left and is kind of sitting on the downstage left rock watching what's going on. And once Hook comes around and sees that the Tiger Lily has been rescued and is gone and is all distraught, Tinkerbell comes over and whispers in his ear and points to Wendy, who is hiding behind the downstage right rock. So you should capture her. And so Hook sends Smee. Smee sneaks around and grabs Wendy and takes Wendy off stage. And Hook turns to Tiger Lily and says, "Thank you very much." And she offers her hand to be kissed. And he kisses her hand and then pulls her over his shoulder and picks her up. And then goes to like march off carrying Tink. And while she's being carried off, Tink pulls a feather out of Captain Hook's hat and throws it on the downstage right rock where Wendy was as they're leaving. And at the very end of the music, Peter comes running on, and he's looking for Wendy, and he goes over to where Wendy was, and he sees the feather, and he looks at it, and he says, "It's Hook." And then he goes to center stage. This is technically the next piece of music, but he goes to center stage, and he calls from off stage, and the Lost Boys come on stage, and he holds up the feather, and he says, "It's Hook," and all the Lost Boys say, "Yep, it's Hook." And so Peter says, "Let's go," and they all go off stage left. They're going to go rescue Wendy. So let's hear this with the music. Mermaids are on stage. They all hear that someone is coming, so they all exit. They have all of this music, 4 8s and a 4 to exit. This is Peter and Wendy hiding. They hide. Hook enters. big rock. And Smee and Hook are like tying her up. Peter says, I'm gonna go mess with him. Distracts Hook. Hook, they go down. Hook says, you go that way. And they stalk around. Peter frees Tiger Lily. And they run off. Hook and Smee come back around. They see Tiger Lily's gone. And Hook throws his sword down and is all distraught. Tink comes over and says, wait, whispers in Hook's ear, you should capture her. So Hook tells Smee to go. Smee goes and grabs Wendy, takes her off. Hook captures Tink, carries her off. She pulls the feather out and leaves it. These snare drums are when Peter is coming on. So, it's all acting, there's no dancing in there. So the basic structure is the mermaids leave. The change in the music is when Peter and Wendy run and hide. The next change in the music is Hook and Tink and Smee coming in and putting Hook and Tiger Lily, I keep calling her Tink. Hook and Tiger Lily and Smee coming in. Hook puts Tiger Lily on top of the big rock. They're making sure she's tied up, and then the change in music is when Peter distracts Hook. So there's like a change in the music where Hook is like, what was that? And he and Smee come down off of the rock, and he's like, you go that way. They pull out their swords, and they start stalking around, and they'll be hidden behind the rock while Peter frees Tiger Lily, and they go down and off stage. And once they're off stage, Hook and Smee come back around, and then they see she's gone. Hook is like all distraught. Tink comes over, whispers in his ear, and gestures to Wendy. And Hook is like, go get Wendy. And Smee captures Wendy. We can work out however we want to do that. And Hook decides to double cross Tink, and he says, thank you, madam, let me kiss your hand. And when he kisses the hand, he pulls her and picks her up over the shoulder. So she's just like a sack of potatoes over the shoulder. And he's going off with her, and she pulls a feather and leaves it really big so the audience sees that she's leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for Peter Pan. On the snare drums at the end is when Peter comes back on, and then is like, where's Wendy? Goes over to where Wendy was, sees the feather, and then calls the Lost Boys on. Let me bring up the music for Peter getting the Lost Boys. Alright, so the little flute, Peter sees Hook's feather and picks it up. On the cello, Peter comes to the center stage, and then there's like drums where he looks at the feather and realizes it was Hook. And then Peter does like a little repeat of the Peter Pan solo. So he does 2 stag leaps. So you have to come to center, maybe past center a little bit, realize it was Hook, and then you do 2 stag leaps, grand pas de chat, balance, then you do step arabesque turn, step, and then make sure that there's the tour jeté. Yep. Alright, so you enter on the snare drums of the previous music, you come around, and then when the music changes and then there's a flute at the beginning, that's when you see the feather pick it up and come to center stage, and then you realize it was Hook, and so then on the big change of music, stag leap, glissade, grand pas de chat, balance, arabesque turn, failli, step, tour jeté, and then another pirouette from fourth, and that's when you call the Lost Boys on, and then you hold the feather up and you say it was Hook. All the Lost Boys who are around Peter say it was Hook, and then Peter says, come on, let's go, and they all leave stage left. So let's hear this music. Pick up the feather. Walk to center stage. on the drum, it was Hook. Stabbing. We're off on the shot. Arabesque turn. And pirouettes. Call the Lost Boys on. They come around, and it was Hook. And all the Lost Boys say, yeah, it was Hook. So he says, let's go. And they all run off stage left. And that all happens once Hook captures Wendy and Tink and goes off. Peter enters, and once Peter enters, the mid-traveler will close because we'll be changing the stage to go back to the pirate scene behind that during that Peter's little dance. So that is Hook capturing Wendy and Tinkerbell into Peter Pan realizing Hook is where Wendy is and calling the Lost Boys on and deciding to go off to go rescue Wendy.